happening on the stage. And one of the reasons for that is that I believe that the format of a stage talk, while it can provide incredibly edifying information to inspire individuals to evolve their mode of consciousness, it is not the actual goal of the fluid or post-fluid modes of consciousness. Which is to say that one person concentrating energy and transmitting it creates a dyad, creates a duality which does not model the ideal evolved state and substrate of simultaneous receiving and listening. Now, I'm not going to avoid that entirely within this. The nature of this is I will be presenting most of the information and most of the programming in what is ideally a consensual osmotic container here. But I would like to note this. In addition to traditional modes of lecturing, I do utilize the mode of transmission. I spent 2.5 years in a very isolated classical tantric container where information was contained energetically. And I send that out. You may notice that kind of a gradient. It's essentially a stem cell for you to accept and take in if you're called, and not if you don't. It's kind of like art. If you like the art, you experience the art. If you don't, it kind of passes through. And ultimately, all life is a form of creation, is a form of art, and is, I will argue here, or hopefully not argue, but I will state here, powered by the heart, powered by love, and that love is actually the sustainable engine for not only the fluid mode of consciousness, but actual interrelationship with the forces of nature and with the forces of culture generation from the causal levels. Further, I believe that meaning is downstream of love, and they have a mutually beneficial and axiomatically connected relationship. Like if you have love, the search for meaning is already consummated and creates more of itself. So we're talking about oxytocin-based rather than dopaminergic and serotonergic reward systems. It's like, what is an actual infinite game? What can we continue forever versus what has a happiness cap and a kind of substrate and a connective cap to it? That's a very brief conversational overview, but for our purposes, I'd love for us to just take a really deep breath, drink in this space, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And just like sigh with that exhale. 2 more. Unlock the jaw, too. One last one. So, what is love? Like, does anybody have any ideas? Anybody have anything?
I want to say, baby, don't hurt me.
I think you're actually, you're really. Thank you for getting the answer to that trick question. That's a part of it. Right? Baby, don't hurt me. Like, what is the ego? Like, we're a young kid. We ram up against a wall, a boundary to our appetite, and then we have a reaction formation against that we call our personality. In part, I'm going to be trucking in huge abstractions here. Please feel free to stop the Wu-Tang Clan at any point, but the ship will end. Like, baby, don't hurt me is a valid answer to what is love. Like the absence of that pain that causes a self and other dyad. What else is love? I've heard a couple of good answers.
My quote earlier from Forrest Landry was that which enables choice.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, my own experience with this was I first encountered that quote with resistance. I thought, that's the driest version of love I've ever heard. That couldn't be it. But the more that I've experienced that in practice, the more that I've really seen that like the best way to honor one that you love is to provide them more choice, which very often goes against the conditions that we experience that we call love early on, like the codependent ones where you grasp onto someone and try to hold them tight so that they don't get away from you. It's not really enabling their choice, but the more that you set them free, the more you are actually enacting love toward them, because that enables more of their life to flourish, more of their soul journey to take place.
Yeah, more, it feels like a texture in that case. There's more of the experience of the other that is present in a space. And there's an active desire for more of the experience of the other to be present. For a continual up-leveling of more experience of the other, not for their evolution or to teach them, but simply to be with. Like I've given talks on different formats, bridging some of the ancient traditions. We're talking alchemy, we're talking tantra, we're talking classical hermeticism. And I've spent 2 hours wrestling in my own brain, why would people even want to know these things? Like, what relevance do these practices have? Do these cultivations have? Like Taoist, martial arts, all of that. And the thing that I have come away with is that it's for greater capacity to know the other, greater capacity for interrelation, greater connectivity. But there are other ways that you can cultivate yourself with these energies. And that's a power versus a love mentality. You can cultivate the presence of energy in the body to heal from wounds, which is essentially a power orientation. And most people on the spiritual path are there because they have been wounded in some way. They've had something gouged out in them. They have not felt that level of love and connection as a child. And they're looking to heal that wound. And then once that wound is healed, most people just wander off into the woods and do their thing. And so spiritual seeking generally has a bad name because, 85 to 90% of the people were there to fix something about themselves. And then once that thing is fixed, it's rather invisible. And so the consistency and the commitment falls away at that point. So what's the point of continuing to cultivate your attention, your awareness, in a system where very little is certain, where very and you're not locking down reality on any one ontology, everything, everywhere, all at once. Like, what could be the possible point of continuing to increase your acuity of perception when what you're met with is just a cacophony of more and more and more sense data, more and more and more possible meanings? Like the neo-reactionary and conservative moment of locking something down under a hard and fast ideology in order to have something human, responsible, reasonable to build and cultivate over time sounds like a very reasonable alternative. And the only way that I've found to justify continued open-ended connection and cultivation, the only unifying principle that I've found that is like anywhere close to the monad, to that DMT space, toroidal, recursive connection to what is, has been the cultivation of connection, metta, awareness, heart-oriented presence that I and others have defined as love. So again, this is the second introduction to this talk. And I'd love to know if anybody has any thoughts or feelings about that before diving into a couple more experiential threads. Yes.
Yeah, like I'm hearing you talk, and the thing that comes to mind is like the explore versus exploit function. Like you talked about how like neo-reactionaries and conservatives like to boil something down, and I feel like that's an exploit function. But when I sometimes go into like more like spiritually progressive circles, I think of like exploration, openness, and like but not really much like exploit or some sort of specialization or some sort of like reduction that could be tractable and very applicable. So how do you deal with that sort of like the nebulosity of the exploration function and how to make order with that?
I think that's actually a great question, and given the level of cognition of this group, I'd love to jump into a few nuts and bolts. So I think that addressing this from first principles is very important. Like really understanding what the state space is to explore, and various other answers throughout history. We're talking pre-Enlightenment philosophies, whether it's classical Tantra of Abhinavagupta of 1000 AD, whether it's the Rosicrucian Hermeticism of 1500 AD, these metaphysical diagrams of what is happening in reality have taken renewed resonance and relevance in being able to navigate our quality of attention from first principles. And this is happening simultaneously right over there. They're discussing the qualia of first principles, but I would love to sketch out a diagram and then accept a volunteer from the audience to start testing this out from the ground up. So I'd love to share the most specific format of navigating reality that I've found, which is the classical tantric kosha system. The kosha system means like body. So it's the navigation of the 5 bodies that lead to the bliss body. First off, you're starting with the Annamaya kosha, or the food body. This is, as you might think, it's your, you can do half a dress over here. It's your physical form, okay? And each one of these bodies has an input and an output that is horizontal to it, as well as a vertical input and output stream to the next more subtle layer. Your physical body is fed by food and water. That is an external input. So the quality of that is going to determine the quality of your cells. That's basically from the earth. So like food and the earth goes up into it to make its component parts. And it can be exercised by doing things in the world. In fact, it adapts very well. If you put pressure on it, it gets stronger. If you leave it weak, it goes weaker. So this substrate creates the health of the food body. Next step up is the prana body, which loosely parallels the human nervous system. So you can actually visualize it. Every nerve ending that you have is correlated to the prana body, the nadis, N-A-D-I-S, which is essentially how you conduit electrical energy through your body. Now, with the proper awareness, you can actually start to extend that field and connect with others and unfuck other people's blockages in there. But the energy derived from the food through ATP, through the synthesis and production of energy and the releasing of that energy, and by consuming oxygen, is also, it turns into a capacitor that you can hold within yourself. So like Taoist practices, Qigong, Tai Chi, over-index towards the prana body. Yoga is going to hit the food body, the prana body, and some element of the next one, which is the emotional body. But the prana body is charged up by the energy from food and oxygen, what you consume, but it can also be shared by other people on a horizontal plane. Like we actually induce that, we can share it, we get a vibe, right? You feel a vibe from somebody. You feel their energy. And right now I'm shifting and talking from up here to this vertebrae in my spine to bring the energy of the group down. We are primates, so via mirror neurons, our nervous systems and our bodies replicate the person that we're choosing to pay attention to and learn from. So we can tune that and tone that to allow other people to receive induction of energy and relax muscles to allow the physical body, the food body, to open these gates for energy to flow in different points. Most of the people in this room will have over-indexed themselves like an inverted funnel, compressing the physical body in order to sublimate it for heightened mental processing. But a lot of people are starting to get a more blended approach of all of the different centers and less pressure, forcing this up to make mental models of one another rather than co-experiencing one another in a blended way across all of the different bodies of reality. This tendency to live in a mental model of one another rather than relaxing the entirety of being to cohabitate with each other is the cliff of Kegan 4 to Kegan 5. Living in the mental model. And actually, Kegan 5 does not go far enough, because Kegan 5, as displayed by Kegan, is just the capacity to switch fluidly between other mental models. This is inaccurate as a final stage of human development, but it is wonderful and a mode of authentic empathy. To go beyond mental models and actually coexist with the essence of another without shielding, without trauma blocking off that connection, is where we are currently standing as a civilization and in this room. The psychedelic revolution is blowing some of the sheaths off of people in a temporary way in modes similar to advanced meditation practices that you had to sit in caves for decades to get anywhere close to what you get in a day, and then have to deal with the traumas and deal with some of the pressures and deal with the stuff that you figure out with that. It is really important. Feel free to grab a chair if you want. It is really important to be able to have an understanding of all of these realms, to be able to navigate through and be able to translate one form of energy to another. So let's take another breath here. There's a lot of brilliant people and many geniuses here, and I use these terms specifically. And there is still too much content to cover in 1 hour to get a somatic understanding of all of this material. This is a curriculum, but we will do our best to simply make it through the bodies and then start getting experiential and operational in navigating them. So the electricity from the prana body, which you feel in most days as nerve endings, but with heightened awareness you can move through your body at will, cultivate and harness and build up in different centers of your body at will, and which can be felt by others who have cultivated similar attainments at first, or on psychedelic states at first to give a first glimpse, if you are of that integrity to hold that, or in deep sexual states where there is an opening from beyond the mind. It is a biological imperative to be sensitive in these states. In liminal states, others can feel these, and the stronger they build up, the wider the gradation of other people who has the capacity to be moved. This energy builds up in different parts of the body, either expressed or repressed, and is the basis and driver for the emotional body, which is simply the emotions. Now we're going up from the brain stem to the midbrain, the things that bring humans together. That emotional body includes the organs of mirror neurons, of tribal leadership, of who can actually hold and sluice this shared energy together. It's going to form joy, laughter, the kind of creative impulse, the first bloom of that kind of communication, or it will be stifled and repressed. It's very common in these circles for people to route straight to the mental body from the energy body and bypass the emotional body altogether. And that will lead to a lot of clarity, but not a lot of embodiment. You're routing around the heart, you're routing around oftentimes the solar plexus. You're routing with a rather unexpressed sacrum, so you don't have that much energy and force. You're over-indexing on the organs of thought and their governmental and institutional organs as weapons. You're becoming more bureaucratic. You're depending on these larger state organs to get your point across rather than the direct transmission of your embodied presence. That's what a late modern civilization will tempt people to do rather than feel all of these feelings that are unexpressed but that also have huge consequences and capacities in the collective unconscious, as Jung put it. This is the great art comes from here. The great artists pull from here. And they cohere fields and new things based on the capacity to access the emotions and free them in other people for their fullest expression. One of the problems of these spiritual communities is they don't kettle themselves correctly. They don't sublimate the energy. They just fuck around. Like, rampant polyamory is the dispersal of energy at like a lower aperture. So we're talking about like, you get a 5-gallon drum of water, you poke a hole towards the bottom, more is going to flow out faster and farther. There'll be very little left to water a garden or to nourish other people. If you can build it up, the second octave of sexual expression is creative expression. You're building up for more refined creative output if you connect everything. The mental body is your thoughts. Your emotions drive and help feed thoughts. You can also feed it by taking in knowledge from trusted sources or untrusted sources. If you're addicted to the internet, you're getting a whole bunch of garbage. It's like eating gum and feeling like you've had a meal but you're still hungry, to quote Chrono Trigger, if anybody's played that one. It's like you're not really feeding it, or you're being very careful about your horse blinders, your sources of information, and your capacity to digest this information. And that's the alchemical fire of the gut and the heart. Having these connected allows you to digest information itself, crack it open, and fuel it for the wisdom body. Again, Vijnanamaya kosha, Jnanamaya kosha, like the Anahata comes here, Pranamaya kosha. These all have Sanskrit names, right? I'm just doing the transliteration of them as was taught in classical Tantra. We're getting to love. And this is where I really want to specify, in the Hermetic paths, in the classical Tantric paths, it's not fucking woo. It is not woo. If you have the capacity to track it all the way down, replicate it in a million little experiments, breathe in and share it with others. Anger has a place. Sadness has a place. All of these are medicinal. If we restrict our capacity to access these levels of volume, these levels of cracking the shells, the masks, the hard trauma-induced blockages, we lose the capacity to open others to share that place. It's the as T.S. Eliot put it, right? The quiet desperation, right? The man in the gray flannel suit. That is what living in an institutionalized world does. But with the wisdom body fully configured, so the food body is feeding the electrical energy, the bionerves, the impulses. That's feeding your emotional body. You're actually not gaslighting yourself. You're feeling what you're expressing, and you have the capacity to express it. You're not facing violent physical and energetic consequences for expressing yourself fully. Now, these emotions are forming thoughts. Oh, I'm being gaslit here. Or, oh, this is a nourishing environment, but it's missing these things. Why don't I bring them? These thoughts start to build up, and you start acting on your reality to restructure the content of that reality in accordance with an accurate information stream fed by good food, good energy, expressed and full emotions. Now the quality of your thoughts is increasing. You're not driven to distracting sidecars. Now you're drawn to places like Fluidity Forum. You're streaming Vervaeke's talks about like how to actually structure a reality. You're exercising well, you're eating better, and you're hanging out with people who care about the world from an authentic place rather than signaling. And you can discern authentic information rather than signaling because your intuition is getting online. That's the wisdom body, when your intuition is starting to sculpt reality and these streams as coherent or incoherent. That's one of the highest paths of the path of Hermeticism, is learning how to listen to the voice of your intuition and letting that guide you. Let's say you had a $1,000 flight that you had to make today and just like doesn't make any sense to make it, but you do it anyway. Why? You have an intuition that it's important. And all of that leads to the Anandamaya Kosha, or the bliss body. And this is kind of that 1,000-petaled lotus thing, that's like, which is just the pineal gland in coherence with the forces of nature that it's designed to model, but it's more than that. It is everything you can feel, think, taste, touch. It is the coordination to experience and turn the dial on your neuroreceptors, your bliss chemicals, all of that. But it's the ability to feel that in everybody around as well, to make those connections. And within that system of connections, it makes space for the trauma that comes into the field. It can actually hold it. It can transform it in understanding. It does not call somebody who's acting like an ass a muggle, an NPC, somebody whose traumas are muting them to the co-participation in your reality. With enough love, with enough of that bliss, the Sat Chit Ananda, that truth, consciousness, bliss. This is an equation. If you can actually have a transmission stream from your base substrates all the way up the chain, both vertical and horizontal, we're sharing energy with each other right now. I've been doing a lot of talking because I just really wanted to get through this operational schema. But a culture can be programmed and encoded to have fluid operation within this, or it can be encoded to extract from the earth, to give people low quality food and inputs on every step of the chain, and to create slaves and food stock for the egregores to feed on and replicate. It might be a little bit inside baseball for some, but there are thought forms in late capitalism that are designed to feed on human consciousness and to excrete a lot of smoke and opacity that clouds the capacity for meaning. It's like we've thrown thousands of years of culture in a coal furnace and we're existing, breathing the fumes, most of us. So how can we get back as individuals, stop gaslighting ourselves or coal furnacing ourselves, right? And start feeling that unbroken thread back into our natural abundance, top down, and the connection with nature, bottom up. In woo circles, a lot of people go to ayahuasca ceremonies to regain that bottom up connection to nature. A living nature, a thing outside of the self. A real relationship with a thing that is not self and not model. In Hermeticism and Hermetic alchemy, they strove to actually create a relationship with the above, listening deeply to signals coming from transpersonal places, cleansing the temple of their awareness and actual temples as well, so that they could model that relation in sacred geometry and within the quality and purity of their thoughts to allow for an unbroken stream of bliss, which led to wisdom, which led to the proper thoughts, which led to engaged emotions. Think of some of the art, like Mozart's Magic Flute, or some Beethoven's symphonies, like these strong emotions that people in this culture call performative. No. This is a higher order of reality that some people are breaking into and often being institutionalized for expressing with the temerity to disrupt the order of the machine.
Yeah, it was just kind of like John.
You are all here, most likely, I'm including you in this because you're kind of demonstrating, because you're fucking mutants. right? Couldn't be held in the boxes, probably in some danger of being medicated on one step of this chain or another, learned how to put on the right faces, learned how to cohere, but are seeking something. Seeking some breath of fresh air, seeking some kind of meaning. I'm not a cult leader, okay? I'm trying to distribute systems and learn from the best systems that are out there. But we need to actually breathe deep. Like, prana body can have really cool orders and disorders. There's mania above it. There's depression below it. Emotional body, you can be histrionic or like borderline above it. And below the emotional body, a dysfunctional emotional body is going to lead to inert, not stoic, like beyond stoic, but just not expressing and bypass. Mental body, superpower, autism for sure, and schizophrenia. And the best functioning of all of these is not some kind of gray middle ground. It is incorporating both of them with your capacity to turn the dial. Like, we need to crack the code on all of the spectrum of being to be able to rebuild this sacred path to unity with a living world and capacity to cohere with each other. And it's my position here in this diagram that and we'll get right to it, that the functioning of this channel is the transmission of love. That the functioning from the substrate, the base state of reality, from top to bottom and bottom to top, is the communion and communication of love, and the verb of that creates meaning. So that is the technical part of this talk right here. And I'd love to open to anybody, starting with Richard.
So, question. You said that we are burning culture for energy. What would it look like if we weren't doing that? Would it be like more people listening to Beethoven and going to church?
Well, that's old culture. You don't have to worship that. It needs to be something. Every time you listen to something, you're either recreating it in your mind and making it relevant and fresh, or you're rehashing old programming to create emotions and milk them. There's what it would look like, not burning it down, is committing to creating in your day, in your walk, in your life, stable relationships that make the world more beautiful, more connected, according to your will as the creator of not just your experience, but shared experience of the commons.
Okay. I would interpret that as we're burning community rather than we're burning culture.
They are one and the same, yes. Because what is culture designed to do?
Weave us together.
Right, and that's the meaning of tantra, right? The weave, the loom. The matrix is from the matreka, which is a Sanskrit word meaning the little mothers or the little weavers, the things that weave together a culture. Certain thoughts are not possible outside of a group of people you trust, outside of this interrelationship. Higher grade thinking, higher grade being is not possible without trust and love.
So, to clarify,
Yeah.
if we are all listening to Beethoven on our own phones rather than going to a symphony hall and listening to Beethoven together, you would call that destroying culture?
No, I would call it doing your own work internally.
But you've replaced a community consumption and a shared experience with individual consumption. I'm still trying to understand what you mean. Do you think that something is lost or destroyed when we go from concert hall Beethoven to our own media device Beethoven?
Right, and especially on Spotify, like a hyper-compressed channel for bandwidth speeds. Yes, I mean, you lose something
Plus
when...
algorithmic influence as well.
Plus algorithm, yes, there's a kind of animal husbandry of culture that's being inculturated by these interests that want you to have more hours of listening rather than more quality time reflecting. Absolutely. And each compression and bandwidth has a negative consequence on this chain. If you compress one layer lower on the chain, your higher substrate will be weaker. You will have less staying power, you'll have less creative capacity from the top down. If your inputs and food is lower grade. And one of the cool things about a concert hall is it's all people, it's all acoustic, and you are a community that is ordinating on a focal point that is then priming the primate brain to view each other as a community. This is why, like, the industrialists of the robber baron era were forced by their wives to build the Metropolitan Museum, to build, like, the Opera House and the Concert Hall, whether they liked it or not. Like, their wives drove the culture. Mrs. Astor brought the 400 most influential families together and created the social register. And if you wanted to be on it and you weren't, you had to build an enduring monument to cultural preservation that would unite everybody together. Like, even if fucking Carnegie and Rockefeller hated each other, they were still lensing their awareness on the sacred fire of the best fucking opera singer in the world, who was transmitting vibrations written by the best composers in the world with the most exquisite settings that were designed largely by alchemical artists who were practicing in secret streams, mostly Masonic, but other streams like Rosicrucian as well, and formatting the culture until World War fucking II. It's not just the dearth of Ayn Randian, of philanthropy that, like, Ayn Randian objectivism has brought in. It is the dearth of cultural consensus in a programmatic model from the top down. Like, you have rich people emulating the Kardashians rather than an actual transmission of knowledge and order and continuity and a rising quality, an aspirational culture.
So how would you describe Disney? I see Disney as the creation of a civic religion for profit. You have the pilgrimages to Disney World. Everyone's cohering around this certain thing. So it seems to be having a lot of those trappings of community and connection, but the culture, the values, they might be better or worse or different in terms of what they're cohering people to do. So what is your reaction to that? Do you see Disney as an evil egregore, or do you see them as an attempt to do the same kind of concert hall thing, bringing everyone together in a common culture?
I would also want to point a caveat that there also seems to be like a differentiation between like audience and community. I feel like Disney is cultivating audience, but not really community.
Yeah. Two channels here when like reacting to that one.
Sorry, can you speak louder?
So two channels to explore here. One is the one that you brought up about how like there's a cultural mood where there's a very large number of people that are audiences and are sharing experiences, audiences of this kind of media. However, only a very small portion of that audience are ever given sacralized permission to participate in the creation of more of that culture. Like, being the best Disney event artist in the world does not give you a license from Disney to make a new piece of canonized Disney art or Disney music or Disney theater. In fact, the more you like their works, the more they withhold them from you, and they try to explicitly take money from people that are obsessed with their media through various kinds of like streamings, like re-release of like old culture or whatever.
I'm going to wrangle this back because the answer is both. There are different ages where Disney has been incredibly potent, mimetic transfer. I'd say a lot of this stuff with Walt's original work. I mean, Snow White is a Rosicrucian initiatory tale. It's the sacred feminine. The seven dwarfs are the seven chakras. Like, even the rose itself and the rose and the cross. Like, Beauty and the Beast from the Disney Renaissance actually parallels La Pieta, when the Beast is in the white robe with the red sash. In Belle's arms, it is Mary Magdalene and Christ and the resurrection of Christ that is being coded into that and broadcast. So basically, from Little Mermaid to about Hercules, in this very interesting period, right with the falling of the Berlin Wall or around that, up until the internet era of like 2001, when globalization and Bob Iger and like the corporate egregore of profit maxing and identity signaling, rather than honoring some of the tales in their original settings and using them to actually transmit culture. You also get amazing video games during this page. The Final Fantasy series came in. A lot of those are heroes' journeys coded by like Joseph Campbell and others to allow you to go into your parents' basement and act through the journey of becoming and then bring it back. Like, all of these are hero's journeys designed to keep you as the main character, and the Japanese developed this faster than us because we took their cocks away during World War II and forced them to innovate culturally and hyper-develop on the field of becoming, because we didn't let them have a military or their own independent economic processes. That's a fuck it, these are all different talks, you know? I mean, Disney World is famously patterned after Mecca. He took the inspiration of the pilgrimage to Mecca and built it in South Florida. That was one of Disney's inspirations. Disney himself was a 33rd degree Freemason. This is all very famous. Like, you know, watch Fantasia.
Degree, what does that mean? What does that imply?
I mean, he's a master Freemason. He was schooled in that, and
Higher
he,
numbers are better?
in Scottish Rite, yeah.
Okay.
Very few people make it to the 33rd degree. It's about 50 people in the world, and they make it there by doing special rites and rituals for the advancement of group and collective culture, which Disney absolutely did. So, honor the man for his work. It's in weird hands right now. The stock is down 65%. I recently bought some. Hopefully it goes up. Like, they can't make continually bad decisions forever. But it would be a bad decision for me to divert the last 10 minutes of this without offering anything experiential. Let's take another deep breath. And I would love for us to do a couple of experiments here, just creating a field of circulation. We're going to do 10 breaths in each one of these directions. This is designed to help blend our prana bodies together and create a shared field of pranic connection. I also want to volunteer that if anybody wants a neck or back adjustment or anything like that for the rest of this conference, I'm available for that. A lot of people suffer from, I understand, deficiencies in integration on the physical level that block the capacity to access upstream, especially up here between the neck and the head after a psychedelic journey. Like, a lot of things can be integrated very quickly with very simple adjustments that I would love to teach people how to do at some point that are not dangerous. But given that I have 3 minutes here, let's take 3 deep breaths in through the crown. Exhaling down through the heart to the root. In from the crown to the heart, always with the heart as the midpoint. Exhale from the heart down to the center of the earth. One last one from the crown to the heart. Centering the heart, not the head. Exhaling from the heart to the center of the earth. Now breathing up from the center of the earth, through the root, up through the asshole. Just relax it. It's fine. No one's going to come in there. To the heart. Exhale up from the heart through the crown. We're flossing it the other way. We're kind of energy flossing. Up from the root to the heart. Exhale, almost pushing it. You can feel a kind of thickness or weight. If you feel a thickness, that's great. Just go through. If you feel something rocky, just go around it. It'll work. Breathing in from the root to the heart. Pausing there. Breathing out and up through the crown. Matt, I'm taking 3 more minutes because I'm doing it. Now starfish, okay? This is a 5-limb practice. And it corresponds to the 5 wounds of the Hierophant in the Major Tarot, eliminating the will to take, to have, to keep, to advance, and the will to be great. You're breathing in from all 5 of these limbs, treating the head just like one of your other limbs. It is only as important as your right or your left hand in this. Breathing into the center of the heart from all 5 at once. Pausing, and with your exhale, you're compressing it even further into the center of your heart. So you're pulling the energy in from your 5 limbs, you human starfish, you 5 fractal. 5s on 5s on 5s, breathing it into the one in the center. And with your exhale, you're compressing it even further in till it's a glowing orb of energy moving in like that. Consolidating your essence here. One last one, breathing in, especially that pathway from the head, that beautiful limb, through the throat, down into the heart. exhale. Now what I would love from each of us is to hold hands. Typically your dominant hand, which is your electric hand, your emanating hand in Hermeticism, is going to be, 90% of us it'll be the right, but your dominant hand is going to be the one emanating energy into the world. Your non-dominant hand will be your receiving hand. Keep your right palms down so that you are breathing energy in. If you do consent to this, yep. On the inhale, I want you to breathe in through your left hands. On the exhale, I want you to offer energy with your right hand. So breathing in. Feeling that circuit from your hand to your heart, through your right hand to the hand and to the heart of your partner to your right. Breathing in again. Feeling that thickness and then releasing, feeling it transit. You might not even want to say because that might actually off-gas energy you want to send through that arm to your partner. The Dalai Lama does this for hours every morning, visualizing himself taking in the suffering of the world and breathing out compassion through his heart. This is an amazing partner practice and one of the highest tantric forms. Let's reverse grip. If I had more time, this could be up to an hour process with different quotes about the different forms of consciousness and modes, allowing the mind to release and more energy to flow throughout. And I've done this as High Priest of a medicine church in Colorado. Amazing things are possible without medicine, but just with the breath and intention alone, especially when your IQ is as high as this collective group. Breathing in through the left, breathing in through the right now, out through the left. Feeling it overlap in the heart, and then really passing through. Feeling that link, the generosity of the partner on your right as you breathe in. The full offering of yourself to the other on your left, knowing that they will not betray that sacred trust here. Breathing in through the right, knowing that even if they could or they would, you are tapped into an inexhaustible supply from far beyond you, that offering that out only offers more and more of your obscurations to be purified through the beauty of that offering. This is Chud Buddhism, this is Bonpo, this is the Tibetan shamanism that led it to be mixed of Buddhism and Tantra. Breathing in through the left, pausing in the heart, breathing out to the left. Now, still holding this center, feeling this group as one large circle, breathing in from the crown and the root at the same time, and on the exhale, offering energy into the center, feeling our energies commingle here, breathing in from the root and the crown at the same time. We're taking 2 more breaths, Matt. And an in the offering. 2 more, breathing in. One last one, biggest breath you've had all day. Now opening your eyes. And when you breathe in, just receiving. You have full permission to drink in this energy in the middle as deep as you want. As empaths, as conscientious people, there is a desire not to take and not to hurt from other people. The receiving is as important, if not more, than the giving in this culture, this particular culture. Drink deep the fruits of your cultivation. Drink deep consensually of each other and offer fully to each other. That way we can build a social substrate that creates a more beautiful world rather than simply modeling it. Thank you all. I know it's a lot to cover in an hour, but I really appreciate the time and space. It's an honor to be here.
Return to your stage on the stage.
Yep. Now there are lines, and that's good. That's very appropriate for the purification of a level of development. So like it's important not to reject the lines. If you reject the lines are in danger of rejecting you.
Something like that.
Well, no, it's like, you know, the denigration of woo culture depends on woo actually honoring lines appropriately.
I found myself thinking I had given a talk on woo. I have an embrace for the word woo that
Is there another row after this, or is this final row in
wooed
second place?
I've wooed the woo.
Wooed the woo.
We are betrothed.
Cool. I think that went reasonably well, given that I totally touched 1/3 of the material that I prepared.
Right. I could tell there was a lot more you wanted to share.